Hello and welcome you to my video classes on water resource management. So today we are mainly discussing about integrated water resource management portion. So in the integrated water resource management portion we are mainly discussing today's lecture frameworks of integrated resource management implementation. So we'll see the content of frameworks of integrated water resource management, also called as one of the tool to implement the integrated water resource management. Why? Because these kind of frameworks help us as one of the tool to make implementation, right? So here mainly we are discussing about introduction, and one type of framework is legislative and another type of framework is organizational frameworks, right? So now we'll study with introduction. We'll start with introduction. You can see here one of the, as we are a civil engineers, right, we know the importance of framework. So you can see here it is what, a framework of house. So here it is framework of house. So why we are providing the framework to the house? To make it strong, or to get a strong support, or to carry the good load, right? So within this only our house is there, it has some limit, right? House is there within this structure only, it gives us some idea that house is there only this safe. And even you can see the frame of a door. So frame of door is what shows only within this only we can install the door. So that's what we can understand within which only we can deal with some activities, right? So here also framework for implementation of integrated resource management, even it help us the outer boundary or within a boundary or within these rules and regulations only we have to manage the water resource, right? So now we'll understand what you mean by framework. So a framework is a support structure or system which is particularly set of rules, right, laws, policies, ideas used for governance. So the actually frame meaning is different for different field of understanding. If you are going for different, like no IT industry, they will call it frame as a, like no some coding and different things. So for us, for like no rules and regulations, legislative organization, framework is what, a support system or support structure which is a particularly set of rules, laws, policies, ideas used for governance. Used for governance. Governance means what? To control or implement, to make it sustainable, balancing use. Right. So that is called as a governance. For example, frameworks means you can call it is for related to water, it is Water Act. So in many countries, Water Act is there within years of like no amendment or passing of policies. Right. So one is Water Act. It gives the rules and regulations how to manage. We'll study in detail how it is. Right. So next is national water policies. Right. National water policies. So how we are using the rules and regulations for to control the traffic. Similarly, we have a rules and regulations to control the water pollution and use it for sustainable development. And even it depends on the level of implementation. So one is some rules are there in a national level implementations, some rules and regulations will be there, they are the state levels or provisions level, and some rules and regulations will be there localized, to give the importance for localized culture and their socio-economic condition. Even some rules will be there in localized area, some localized area or reserved areas. Even some rules and regulations will be there for river basin. So right, so a framework will be there in a national level, state level or provincial level, local level, and even river level, right? So these are the rules and regulations. So now we will see in some other, like no why it is needed, why like legislative framework and organizational frameworks are needed. You see the definition of integrated water resource management. It says integrated water resource management is a process which promotes the coordinated development. So one we have to take care, it is, it should be, integrated water resource management should be coordinated development and management of water, land and related resource in order to maximize the economic and social welfare in an equitable manner without compromising the sustainability of vital ecosystem and environment. So it is what it need many like no important things. One is coordinated development management, and we have to take care not only water, even we have to take related resource, and there has to be give good economic returns as well as investment and social welfare. and without compromising the ecosystem and environment. It's not so easy to achieve this kind of things. So that's what we need, rules and regulation, or we need frame, because we have to do within this only, and for the safer side, to avoid the future problems, or to avoid the future conveniences or crisis, right? So that's what there is a need of involve the legal and institutional enforcement system. So due to this conflict or this complexity for integrated process management, it's not so easy to this. That's what we require, legal laws or instrumental institutional laws, enforceable system which ensures the sustainable and provides the parameters with which water market could operate. So main intention is sustainability of water and provides the parameters within which water market can operate. So sustainable or balancing the ecosystem, as well as we are using water for our developmental activities, right? And mainly two types of frameworks are there for integrated resource management. One is legislative framework and organizational framework. So legislative framework means what? These are the rules and regulations we should follow, right? It may be how to use. We'll study in detail what you mean by legislative, but I'll give the difference. One is legislative means it is a detailed description of ownership, how to use, and who is transferable, all the things, right? So but institutional or organizational framework means what? It is related to institutes. So how to work the institutes, which kind of levels are there, where is the boundary, right? Whether it is a state level institute or national level institute or local level institute, the mainly institute duties and hierarchy of the institute, right? That is what called as a organizational framework. So now we will study what you mean by legislative framework. Legislative framework. So before that we have to understand the policies, right? We had many policies, right? The policy means setting goals for water use, protection and conservations. For related to water, policy means setting goals for water use, protection and conservations. We are making some aims, or we have a targeted, we have a aims to protect water as well as to conserve the water, right? Policy development gives an opportunity for setting national objectives for managing water resource and water service deliveries with a frame of overall development goals. So here we are not compromising with the uses of water, but even we are giving the good effort or good balancing between the environment. So we are achieving the national objectives as well as use of water with a balanced environment, right? Now we'll go for legislative framework. As I told, it's mainly legislative. Legislative means managing the people, or how to use, where to use, who has to use, how to use, all things of questions we are solving in this legislative framework. I'll repeat, in a legislative framework, here mainly the discussion is you should not get any conflict. So to solve the conflict, here they are telling how to use the water, where to use the water, who has to use the water, and how much has to use, all the things. It particularly related to use and mainly use, right? So balanced use. So now legislative framework, the rules to follow to achieve the policies and goals. So in short form they are giving, legislative framework means rules to follow to achieve the policies and goals, right? But the required water law covers ownership of water, permit to use or pollute also. Even some industries are there, they require some discharge of their waste material to the river, right? So even some permissions will be there to pollute also, because you are not compromise with the industrial development or developmental activities. So here it is the it covers the ownership of the water, who is the owner of the water. Actually water right is not there in any country. We are able to use the water, but if it is belongs to our property, only we can use how much water is available at the natural condition, but we cannot state that the entire water is belong to me and you should not use and you should not go from one place to another place. Obviously it is a natural resource. The only you have permitted if it is in your property or within your land property, but there is no any ownership like a land ownership. Particular area is belongs to some person, but no water is belongs to any person. But ownership to use the water and permit the users or pollute and even it may gives the permission for public. So public, how public has to use and how private sector has to use and who has to pollute it, right? And even it has a transmitting or transforming abilities of these permits. So it has to be one person to another or one organization to another, how to transmit, how to give up permissions, right? All the things, detailed information. For example, if I tell, um, if you want to get a permission from what permission for water use, so there will be rules and regulations. According to rules and regulations only we are submitting some documents, and they will verify the documents. After verifying the document, they will check all the legal frameworks, legal requirements. If you are able, if you are eligible, then they will give permission. If you are not eligible, for example, if you are not a citizen of the country, then they won't give any permissions. Why? Because according to them they are providing only citizen of the countries. So like this, it depends on the rules and regulations of that country, right? So that is what mainly related to legislative, right? Then it underpin regulatory norms. It underpins the regulatory norms for conservation, protection and priorities. It mainly says about underpins, or even it is taking care of regulatory norms for conservation, protection and prioritization. Prioritization means what? We have a water users. We have a water use for different purposes. One is drinking purpose, agriculture purpose, industry purpose, navigation purpose. Based on their study and based on the regional requirement or based on the national benefits, even here they are told that drinking water is the first priority, second is the irrigation, third one is the hydropower plant generation. So different industrial supply, it depends on the requirement, but here also they will give prioritization of water use. And even it has shows the regulatory norms for conservation and protection, and even it means the right, customary entitlements, right? Next, it provides the tool for ensuring the continuity integrity. Even it provides the tool for ensuring the continuous integrity of the regime, that is through governance structure, mechanism for monitoring, evaluating, facilitating compliance and dispute prevention, settlement and okay. So they are telling that it provides the tool for ensuring the continuity, integrity of the regime. For example, we have some rivers of intra-state, intra-provision or intra nations, right? We have some countries which shares the water, right? So in that condition, even it has some treaty, treaty. When you are getting the treaty between two countries, even it has a rules and regulations to prevent the dispute, or we are solving the dispute, right? And even it is a settlements. So it gives all the rules and regulation, and main agenda is what? Sustainable use of water, better use of water and good quality getting of water. You should get a good quantity, quality of water, and should not be any partiality between based on the gender or based on the race or based on the religion, right? So it is what water is for all. That kind of rules and regulations will be there in a legislative framework. It allows for modification of existing regime in order to able to adopt to change need and circumstance. Even here there will be a rules and regulation that even you can change if these rules and regulations are not fit for the current situations. If for current situations we do some changes, even you can make amendment and even you can change the rules and regulations based on the conditions also, right? So I'll repeat, very important. Legislative framework means it is mainly related to management of the water resource or for the good condition, and it is giving how to use, who has to use, how much has to use, right? So and even it has a taking consideration of protection, conservations by rules and regulation. It is a game of rules and regulation of management of water resource, right? So next we will go for what do you mean by organizational or institutional framework. So here in the context of this framework, administrative institutes that are need to be in place to develop, manage water resource in a sustainable manner, right? So mainly it is related to what? Administrative, institutional, that are need to be in a place to develop and manage water resource in a suitable manner. See, we know that the management of water resource is not so easy without the institutes or without the management departments. So whenever we have so much of rules and regulations, right? Obviously, people, if it is not strict, if it is not no one is monitoring, then if it is there is no monitoring, then definitely people will make mistakes. So to monitor or to implement whatever rules and regulations are there, then some organizations are required, some officers are required, some workers are required, right? So mainly this framework is related to establishment of the institutes, or you can call officers, or you can call departments or ministries. So this all includes in the institutional framework. This section identifies four institutional roles that must be fulfilled for water governance system to achieve the sound integrated water practice. So mainly this framework is focuses on the requirement of the institutes. So one requirement of the institute is regulations and enforcement. As I told, regulation and enforcement, whatever new rules and regulations will come or it is adopted by the government of the nation, then they have to make implementation on the ground. On the ground they have to implement and regulate also. They have to regulate time to time, right? Deals with institutions that are responsible for regulatory implementation and assessment, and it has to required level of action in the state level or regional level or local level. Even they have some boundary, even it shows the regulation and enforcement boundary. Next is water supply and sanitation services. We know that some many institutes are there, like urban water supply and sanitation board, right? Irrigation board or irrigation departments, right? Why we started these kind of institutes? Why? Because it has some serviceability. They are giving the service to the users. So here also water supply and sanitation service features of public, private, community-based water supply and sanitation service provided are outlined. So here mainly, if it is the public is supplying the water resource and water supply and sanitation, what will be the conditions, right? If is a private sector is involved in the water supply and sanitation, then what are the conditions? If community based, right, community based water supply and sanitation, what will be the rules and regulations and how to manage, who is responsible if anything happened, and how much maintenance has to be needed. All the things will be given in terms of water supply and sanitation service outlines. Next is coordination and facilitation. Coordination and facilitation. National, subnational, state, provisional, local, civil society, river basin organization, and impact assessment committees. So we have a different institutes, as I told, national level institute, state level institutes, local level institute like a village panchayat or a village organization, and some civil societies, for example some committee, assessment committee. We have different kind of institutes. So but when you can manage properly when you have coordination among the different organizations. So here they are mainly focusing on some rules and regulations, some laws. Mainly it enhance the coordination among the different institutes, and main purpose is smooth going of the management and effective management. So last one is capacity building. So the role of institute is what? They has to increase their capability. So based on the increase in the technology. So based on the increase in the technology, even officers has to be develop their skills. Even institute also has to develop their capability by instruments, newer instruments, or establishment of new technologies, modeling, right? Whatever based on the technology, even they has to improve their skills and knowledge by making the training programs. Even you have to conduct the training program, and we know why we are conducting training program, to increase our knowledge about the and even this kind of requirement of developmental activities also said in the rules and regulations, right? So I'll repeat, framework means what? Mainly related to set of rules and regulations. And why we are making rules and regulation? To manage the water resource. Why? Because we have to give our available water resource to our future generation, or make the balance, right? So then mainly two types of frameworks are there. One is legislative. Legislative means whatever legislative action has to be taken, Then organization means what are the organization rights, duties, how much they have, and how to make it. All the rules and regulations are there in the organizational, right? So thank you for, so even here you can understand how they are using this, right? Here it is a governance, right? And for the governance, policy frameworks are required, and based on the policy and framework they can manage social development, they can manage economic development, even they can manage environment development. Why? Because management institute are there each, but main thing is we have to provide the serviceability to different sectors. One is health sector, we have to provide the water quality, water supply, and floods, energy, agriculture, industry, pollution prevention, coastal management, ecosystem management. These are the some main requirement to make this, right? So then to mainly these kind of things, water is required or water users and with the available water resource. So to make these entire activities, right, it is not so easy. That's what after the first governance will start, and below that policy, rules and regulations. It gives the idea how to use and how to manage with consideration of all the main things, right? So thank you for watching this video.